Redford passed away quietly last night at the age of 89, and to say that cinema has lost a titan is to put it very mildly. He is an actor, I think, that sort of embodied that sort of golden era charm that sort of the likes of actors like, for example, Gary Cooper. He had that sort of Californian air to him. This man who was, let's admit it, he was gorgeous. He was a very good-looking man. But I mean, sort of that wasn't simply the measure of him. He wasn't just a pretty face. He wasn't just someone with that sort of tousled, sun-kissed blonde hair. He was a phenomenal actor. He was someone who starred in, perhaps I would say, every genre possible, but then as an institution who had been working for, I would say, the better part of, I would say, almost 50 years in Hollywood. He helped to, I would say, carry on this legacy of an actor who wasn't your sort of typical sort of like studio actor, wasn't typical of a system or an industry. He wasn't typical. I mean, just the length and breadth of his filmography, just the length, just the sheer diversity of it all, really lends to how sort of versatile and talented of an actor that he was. But also, I mean, speaks to perhaps and his own personal interest, his own sort of inclinations as an actor, and his interests in these various vehicles that put him on display, that presented his talent. And it is a loss. Of course, I would say, I think the very last time that I even saw him on screen was in the first episode of, I think, season 3 or season 4 of Dark Winds, a TV series that he executive produced along with George R.R. Martin. And he's there very briefly in this jail cell scene in which he's playing chess with Martin, and he kind of tells him, like, take a shit or go get off the pot, like he's kind of like, George, it's time to make your move. I think in reference to, of course, George not having written The Winds of Winter, I think it's been a decade now, but of course back to Redford. This is going to be a retrospective. Again, he's done so much that it would be hard to sort of kind of encapsulate everything, but I think I'm going to sort of bring it down to just 3 of his movies. I'm going to mention a couple of others. There are so many great ones, honorable mentions in his body of work that for any of you out there who liked him as an actor, I would 100% sort of recommend these films. And besides, like, the Oscar-winning ones, besides all of those big ones, besides, for example, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, besides, Out of Africa, besides, The Horse Whisperer, forget that one. All the President's Men, The Great Gatsby, yes, but The Natural, The Last Castle, I mean, sort of even, for example, in Captain America Winter Soldier, Lions for Lambs, Old Man and the Gun, which is a really good one recently, and a Western he did, Jeremiah Johnson, I really like that one. What else? Off the top of my head, or at least Sneakers. Man, what a good sort of like, film that sort of like, quietly 90s movie. They're just so, they're a lot, but I'm gonna limit this to 3, of course. The Candidate, that was another really good one, and sort of also reflective of his politics as well. His politics also led to a large part to the Sundance Film Festival, and sort of like, being the premier film festival that it is today. But it also was a very good platform for various sort of like for indigenous rights, for Native American rights, for sort of like, showing marginalized people. I mean, Sundance, what it is today, I mean, sort of every filmmaker and their aunt sort of clamoring to get their film submitted to it. I mean, sort of, I can admit that I too, once upon a time, submitted a documentary to it. Unfortunately, it wasn't selected. But I mean, sort of like, this man, everyone's got to go eventually, but I mean, I was always jealous of him. I was jealous of him because sort of stylistically, like sort of his sartorial choices, they were always so effortless. Whether it was his peacoat in 3 Days of the Condor, with that sort of like, sort of kind of semi-bushy, tousled sort of hair and the aviator glasses, or it was, what's it called, that shearling jacket in Downhill Racer, his corduroy suit in All the President's Men, and then, of course, the film that I'm going to talk about, perhaps all his style choices in Spy Game. I don't know whether it was a personal choice, it was reflective of his own sort of taste, but he just looked really good. And sort of like, he wasn't, I mean, sort of, while the likes of Gary Cooper and Cary Grant sort of had that broadness to them, I mean, they looked like men, I mean, sort of Gary Cooper in High Noon, for example, or as any cowboy or that he ever played, he fit the role. I mean, I'm not, Redford just kind of, I think, embodied this sort of 70s aesthetic, something the kind, like, the kind that sort of even Gary Newman had, the kind that Dustin Hoffman had. And I mean, this is sort of that crop of actors. And what a shame to lose him. The three movies that I will be talking about, sort of in memory of Robert Redford, are three of my favorites from his body of work. There's a lot, but three of my favorites. One is, of course, The Hot Rock, which is from 1972. Then you have 2001's Spy Game, and lastly is All Is Lost from 2013. The Hot Rock has to be my favorite sort of comedy heist movie. It's a shame that it is so underrated because, I mean, it's kind of buried sort of in the recesses of, like, these 70s movies that, like, blink and if you miss them. And I remember watching this and being remiss, because I think I watched it like a couple of years ago, that for like almost 50 years this movie was at least undiscovered by me. Not to say that I'm that old, but I mean, like, you barely get, you barely, I mean, it's mentioned. I mean, they often, you'll have people talk about The Sting, another Robert Redford movie. You'll have people talk about, for example, The Old Man and the Gun, which was a pretty decent movie. I mean, I really enjoyed it. But this sort of crime caper movie where you have Robert Redford playing a, what's it called, thief, along with this sort of motley crew of other thieves. And they are in pursuit of this hot rock, this diamond. And pursuit is putting it very lightly, because they go through every possible sort of like, bungle, or I was going to say, well, I can say it, they go through every possible fuck up. I mean, just the way that this story is kind of told and is structured, it starts off with him, if I remember this correctly, him trying to pay off a debt for, I think, his brother-in-law. And in order to do that, they have to, secure this diamond. But at every turn, something just keeps on happening. And there is Robert Redford there to save the day. And I just can't believe that this movie, I mean, sort of, even though it has a very decent rating, like it's got like, what, an 80% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, it is an undiscovered gem. It is a film that is so deserving of being one of those sort of crime greats, comedy crime greats. I mean, you often talk about, like, for example, the Ocean's movies, right? What else? Nothing else is coming to mind right now. But I mean, you've got this whole genre, like the Lady Killers and stuff like that. But this is most definitely deserving of being right up there. And yeah, I mean, I think you could double bill it with Sneakers. That's another really good one of his. But if you had time for a double bill, those two would really work. Growing up, I mean, I remember Redford was always this actor. I remember sort of in Indecent Proposal. I was like, who is this guy? I was still a tyke. I was pretty young then. So, I mean, sort of, and then, you would catch occasionally on like HBO, I mean, there would be reruns of Out of Africa, and you'd be like, or like, for example, A River Runs Through It, even though he directed that. But you would always catch him, and you would feel that Redford is an actor for a different generation, for your parents' generation. But I think it was a movie like Spy Game that really made him cool for me, because I was a teenager when I watched that. And it is one of the best spy movies out there, one of the best Tony Scott films. It is a fantastic movie simply to see Brad Pitt and Robert Redford, who are essentially sort of a young and old version of themselves, as characters and even perhaps as actors. It's just a movie that delivers on so many levels, and again, for me, was able to make somebody who was by then, I mean, sort of in their 60s, just cool for me. Like, I mean, there was all of these moments in the movie, him as an actor, as a character. But then even, I mean, sort of, in the interrogation scene, that sort of Ralph Lauren ensemble that he has, tweed coat, denim shirt, black knitted tie, and, sort of that Robert Redford hairdo. I mean, I was like, man, I need to get into this. I need to sort of check out his oeuvre. I need to go sort of like, deep into his work and study and just, discover who this man is. Because sort of for the 90s, at least, I was at a remove from him. I was like, this guy is not my generation's actor. At least he's not somebody who appeals to me. Spy Game, I'm sure you all remember the premise. It is Robert Redford and Brad Pitt, both CIA agents, but it's this story told over epochs, where you cover various events. I mean, I think it starts all the way in Vietnam, and then it goes, it covers the Lebanese Civil War. It covers, sort of course, the Cold War itself. It covers this entire sort of generation, the heyday of spycraft. And there you have Robert Redford playing mentor to Brad Pitt's, sort of recent inductee. And it's sort of a tempestuous relationship. It's a relationship where, sort of Brad Pitt is admiring of his mentor, and Robert Redford's character is appreciative and is, there is that bond between these two. But then there is this sort of parental almost between a father and son, that sort of tug of war, a sort of clash of ideologies, of generations, of people with very different worldviews, and sort of what they're doing sort of as spies, and their different takes on things. The film, of course, starts with, Redford, who is on his way out of the agency. It's his last day. And his Porsche, that beautiful car, the aviators, which I think is like a signature Redford look. He's on his day. This is his last day. And he finds out that his protege, Brad Pitt, has been captured by the Chinese and is in a jail cell. And I think on the morrow will be executed. So thus sets in a chain of events where Redford has to extract him from the prison, all the while doing so from his office and being interrogated by other agents who are wondering just how Brad Pitt ended up in that Chinese jail cell. He was there to, of course, rescue his girlfriend, the very lady who led to Brad Pitt, these two characters, becoming estranged. And it's a really tight story. It is, it had that same effect on me that, for example, a movie like, I would say, I'm not going to say that Spy Game is like the spy version of Forrest Gump in that sort of it charts American history, but like it really does encapsulate, I would say, a good 30 years of American history and world events. And there you have, in between, these two characters and this almost Greek tragedy between them of this struggle between, as I said, ideologies and generations of these two different worldviews. But then, of course, it comes almost perfectly in those last moments where he has, through various machinations, through various sort of, cloak and dagger and sort of backroom dealings, he's able to secure the release of Brad Pitt and his girlfriend. And there's that last final moment in which, there he is piling, he's gotten all of his effects in that sort of cardboard box, and he gets into his Porsche, and the interrogators, those investigators, they're in their room, and they're like, wait a second, how many wives did this man have? And was it 3 or 4? And then this one guy who's an old hand at the agent, he's like, he's never married. Was never married. And cuts to Brad Pitt on the helicopter being whisked away. And I think it's one of the special forces people, and they're like, sort of Operation Dinner Out has been completed or something like that, was successful. And Brad Pitt, battered and bruised, he goes, soldier, what did you say? He's like, what was the name of the operation? He's like, Operation Dinner Out. And sort of in that moment, he realizes that his mentor and his friend helped save him. And sort of there you have him speed away in his Porsche, cut back to Redford in his Porsche. And just cool, man. I mean, sort of Redford, for me at least, was immortalized in that movie. There were a bunch of movies, of course, in between 2001 and the next movie that I'm going to talk about. Of course, he was in Winter Soldier, which was one of the best Marvel movies. He was, as I said, Old Man and the Gun. He was in Lions for Lambs. What other sort of 2000s movies was Pete's Dragon? It was okay. A Walk in the Woods. I like the book better. What else? What else were the other 2000s movies that I am forgetting? I did not. I think he directed. Yeah, he did. The Legend of Bagger Vance. I didn't watch that. It's like that movie that came out recently. What's it called? The what was it? The Secret Society of Magical Negroes or something, whatever that's, that one. But the movie I'm talking about is, of course, J.C. Chandor's All Is Lost. How Redford was not nominated, or, how he did not win an Oscar for this movie is just, it boggles the mind. All Is Lost is about a protagonist. I don't think we even learn his name, who is out there sailing. I think this is somewhere in the Pacific. It's a survival movie. Indian Ocean. And he is out there. We don't know why. We don't know if he has family or if... We don't really know. I mean, he remains this sort of mystery, our protagonist. But the movie is a survival film in that the boat that he's on, it collides with a shipping container, and sort of therein starts this man's ordeal. it is very much like Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea. And in this case, literally, because this was 2013. So, he was in his 70s at the time. And it is such a almost biblical struggle. This man against the ocean. I don't know how to sort of put in words this force that is the ocean, and when it is and when it rages. It is a primal sort of force. It is a force of nature that this one man has to contend with. And I don't want to be cliche and say that the film is inspirational, but in seeing him battling, sort of one thing after another, whether it's the weather, whether it's the ocean, whether it's his failing ship, his sinking ship, there's just something that really puts on display this sort of heroism and nobility, which I think is very fitting that we do not get to know who this person is, because he could just about be anyone. But you see this nobility, this heroism in a man. And it is such a fine movie, so well acted by an actor who would easily, could easily, like, for example, Jack Nicholson could have, like, sort of hung his hat and sort of called it a day. But sort of the very fact that he is here in his 70s, in this physical role, in this emotionally demanding role, because you're carrying, there are no other actors in this movie. It's just him. It's just Robert Redford for the entire duration of this movie. And to carry the entire weight of it. We've seen, for example, movies like Castaway with Tom Hanks. But there are sort of bookended moments in the beginning, at the end, where there are sort of other cast members and stuff like this. But sort of this movie is simply Robert Redford. And you are so a part of his journey, you're so on board with this struggle that I remember towards the end of the film, when, as the title goes, all hope is nearly lost. Sort of the boat has sunk. He has now given himself. He is now literally in the hands of the fates. And sort of there he is, and it's this beautiful shot where, sort of, it's this upward shot, and it's looking up at him because, sort of he's in the ocean and it's sinking, and, there he is. And there's this, we're looking up at him, and there he is, framed by the ocean and just this little speck of a man. And you wonder if after all of that, the payoff is him going to die. But then, in a seeming, now that's a very good thing on the director's part, where you can't really tell if it's sort of him having passed on to the other side, and that outstretched hand is then him being sort of embraced into the afterlife, or indeed it is the real world and he is being rescued. A beautiful film, and the fact that he was not nominated was unjust. But that was Robert Redford, and it's a shame that, he has passed on. I think there are very few actors left from that sort of generation. We recently lost Gene Hackman as well, under very, sort of the circumstances of his passing were quite, perhaps equally tragic, but I think the way Robert Redford goes is perhaps, I think, what we all would want to, going quietly in our sleep.